Good morning. My Immortal is a Harry Potter fan fiction that was written in 2006 to 2007 and is considered the worst piece of fan fiction ever written. It has an air of mystery about it. It's unclear whether or not the author wrote it seriously or as a joke. It's also still unclear who wrote it. A woman came forward years ago and claimed that she was the author and that she wrote it as satire. It's not 100% confirmed that that woman is actually the author, so therefore it is still unclear if My Immortal is satire or not. I am of the belief that it is satire, and it is fantastic. I don't think it's possible. I just spit everywhere. I don't think it's possible for something this funny and screwed up to be unintentional. So I went through all of My Immortal and screenshotted all of the evidence that I'm going to present today, and we're going to talk about it. Hi, this is a very important author's note before we get into the video. This is the official content/trigger warning for this video. My Immortal discusses some pretty heavy topics really casually, and I don't want to take anyone by surprise with that sort of content and that sort of talk. I do not take these subjects lightly, but the author did and chose to write it that way. I don't know if this is part of the satire to take these serious topics so lightly, or if it is a product of its time. This was written in 2006, and if you were anywhere near the internet in the late 2000s, it was the Wild West. We do not have the internet. There was no internet etiquette like there is now. It was a different landscape. So I truly don't know if this was an intentional play by the author, which I think I do touch on at some point in this video, or if it's not that meta and the author was simply of her time. I can't believe I'm talking about 2006 like it's the 1900s, but whatever. So this is your official content/trigger warning for some of the things we're going to talk about in this video. I think self-harm comes up the most. I tried to sort of brush over this one, but I do talk about it a little bit. The author, if you decide to read My Immortal, the author talks about self-harm a lot. Her characters do it, and she mentions in her author's notes that she does it. It comes up a lot in My Immortal if you decide to read it. So self-harm, unaliving one's self. I don't know if I can say the word on YouTube, but unaliving oneself. Adults behaving inappropriately towards minors. The main character of this story is 17, and there are a few adults in the story that behave inappropriately towards her. Unwanted photographing, non-consensual photographing of the same 17-year-old in a non-appropriate manner. There's some drug use, but it's pretty nondescript, and it only comes up a couple of times. It's implied to be heavy drug use, like there's needle mentions, I think. Those parts have the vibe of someone who doesn't know anything about drugs. It's like someone saying like, oh, they injected the marijuana, that kind of vibe. It's like, it's not that intense. Oh, there's one specific part, I only talk about it for like a second. Things happen to a corpse. It's very non-graphic, but yes, things happen to a corpse. So there's a mention of that. I try not to get into crazy detail about any of these subjects because that's not the point of this video, but I just wanted to mention it. I wanted to mention that while the author treats these subjects very casually, I personally do not. And this is your trigger warning for this video, but also for reading My Immortal itself. This is mostly about the self-harm and the unaliving. It comes up so much more than you could possibly imagine in My Immortal. So I just wanted to put that out there. So keep yourselves safe and go forth. I promise it doesn't come up that much in this video. This goes in a lot of different directions. My Immortal tells the story of a seemingly American girl named Ebony Darkness Dementia Way. And only after reading this whole thing, all 44 chapters of it, did I realize that one of her names is Dementia. What's that all about? And she is a classic self-insert, everybody is obsessed with her, she's incredibly cool and beautiful type character. All of the characters are in love with her. And everything is gothic with Ebony. She is gothic. The author rewrites all of the main characters' backstories and gives them new names to make them gothic. For example, Harry Potter is now called Vampire because he is a vampire. Ron, whose name is Diablo and now has black and blue hair, transfigured his scar into a pentagram because also all of the characters are Satanists. So, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of like satirical angles happening here. I think it is making fun of like the goth emo scene kid wave that was happening in the mid 2000s. It's very reminiscent of the goth kids from South Park to me. So, hold on, when was that introduced? For some reason, I never came back to my research about the South Park goth kids. The South Park goth kids first appear in an episode called Raisins, which aired in 2003. So it does predate this fan fiction by 3 years. So it is very possible that it is a reference. It's also possible that it's not. I just thought it was interesting. Also, I believe that this work makes fun of many fanfiction tropes. I wasn't reading fanfiction when this was published because it was in 2006, but there's a lot going on here that reminds me of older fanfiction that I've read. Let's get into it. We start off the story with this author's note. Every single chapter, which there are 44, begins with an author's note. Most of the author's notes are exactly the same, which is, thank you to Raven, which appears to be the author's friend, for helping with the story and the spelling. I say that in quotes because the spelling is atrocious. And after this author's note, this is the first one, every single one after that is like, fuck you preps, fuck you haters. I don't know what platform this originally was published on. I, for my research, dug through the My Immortal wiki fandom site, so I assume she was getting hate comments on whatever she published this on. I included this note as an example of the spelling that we're going to see, but also that was a fan fiction thing that died out, was tons of author's notes, and even ones mid-story, which happens here too. So that is a reason that I believe that this is satire. She will do it mid-sentence. It seems like a lot of the comments made fun of the main character, Ebony, for being a Mary Sue, and mid-paragraph, Ebony would do or say something, and then in parentheses, the author would be like, see, would a Mary Sue do that? Stuff like that. So now we have the iconic intro, which, if you're at all familiar with My Immortal, you have heard the first paragraph. It's iconic, but we're not going to talk about the whole thing. Hi, my name is Ebony Darkness Dementia Raven Away. Author's note. Sorry, there's going to be a bunch of author's notes as I continue to think of shit while I'm editing, but I have been thinking about this for a while. One of Ebony's many names is Raven. I forgot about that when I mentioned her in the intro of this video. One of her names is Raven, and as we just saw in the first author's note, her friend's name is also Raven, and I thought that was interesting that she used her friends' names as one of Ebony's 30 middle names, and I just now landed on, I think both her and her friend think Raven is a cool goth name, but her friend, like, somehow got dibs to the name Raven as, like, her fake online persona name, like her goth name, so the author, decided to use it as one of Ebony's many names, because friend Raven was already using it as her name. So, I don't know, I just thought that was interesting, and I kept thinking about it, like, why would she use her friend's name as one of her character's middle names? And I think that's it. I think Raven's real name isn't Raven, and that it's like a internet cool goth name. Because, we all used to do that when you're like 12 and you hate everything about yourself, including your name, for no reason. Sorry, there's so much upstairs noise. I live in the basement. You hate everything about yourself, including your name, so you, like, want to rename yourself something cool. Like, I decided I hated my name for absolutely no reason when I was in the 3rd grade. Someone accidentally called me Alice, and I was like, oh, I need to be Alice now. I actually still love the name Alice. And then I read Twilight, and I loved it even more. But yeah, I think the friend Raven and the author are in that stage of, like, we need cool online goth names. And friend Raven won the usage of the name Raven. So this is the author still using that name. So that's my theory. See, we have an author's note right in the middle of the paragraph. I'm not related to Gerard Way, but I wish I was because he's a major fucking hottie. No sane, normal person would say that. Oh my god, I wish I was related to that person because they're so hot. You want it to be incestuous when it's not? Next sentence. I'm a vampire, but my teeth are straight and white. Twilight was published less than a year before this fanfiction. The first Twilight book, anyways. I believe that's a Twilight reference. We also have the over-description of physical appearance immediately right off the bat, which has been a fanfiction trope forever. I'm actually surprised that this author didn't do what people used to do, where you would describe the outfit a character was wearing in text, and then you'd just link to, like, Polyvore or whatever the outfit was. You'd, like, embed a link in the text itself. You know, like this. I miss Polyvore. Bring back Polyvore. And then we have Willow, which is the author's friend Raven. We have a self-insert character, which I believe is another, like, old fanfic reference where authors would insert themselves, their friends, or once I even saw someone was writing a story and they had a different story blow up on Wattpad, and they had characters from their other stories, like, it wasn't supposed to be a connected universe, but they'd show up anyways, if that makes sense. The same author also resolved a plot point by having herself show up and solve an argument and then leave, like she was an omnipresent god, which I thought was hilarious. But I believe this is that. We also have more over-describing of the outfits. That's a really common theme with My Immortal, is every scene has an over-described outfit, hair, makeup for everyone. This is especially notable because the author does not describe anything else. They do not describe settings, nothing. The only time this author gets descriptive at all is with the characters' appearances. This is so prevalent that sometimes it is difficult to tell where a scene is taking place because you can't tell, and the author doesn't even really mention it. You just kind of have to figure it out because this author does not describe setting even a little bit. The outfits, the appearances, the hair, the makeup is truly the only thing that gets any kind of attention to detail in this whole story. What the hell are you doing, you motherfuckers? It was Dumbledore. This is Dumbledore's first appearance in this fic. I believe this is a reference to the Goblet of Fire. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the book, when Dumbledore discovers that Harry's name has been put in the raffle for the Triwizard Tournament. I don't even remember what the line is exactly, but the book says that he says it calmly, like, who did this? In the movie, he's like, who the fuck did this? And that was a meme for a long time where people found that sentence and it says Dumbledore said calmly, and people are like, yeah, it's real calm movie. I think this is a reference to that. Author's note: stop flamming. Flaming? If you flam, it means you're a prep and a poser. Ebony and Draco were caught having sex in the Forbidden Forest, and he yelled at them. The only reason Dumbledore swore is because he had a headache, okay? That's hilarious. P.S. I'm not updating until I get good reviews. Rebows. This is also an older fanfiction thing. Like, I'll update when I have a certain amount of likes, reviews, kudos, whatever. So I think this is that too. Again, I didn't read this where it was originally uploaded. I actually don't know if it's still where it was originally. This video isn't about that, so I didn't look into it. I can't confirm the hate comments or anything like that. Crookshanks, I shouted at him. Crookshanks in Harry Potter is Hermione's cat. Here, Ebony is casting a spell upon Voldemort. There's a lot of stuff like that where the author makes mistakes and swaps a lot of things around and screws a lot of things up, but the mistakes are only possible if you know what you're talking about. Like Crookshanks. That's nonsense, but clearly this person has read Harry Potter and is swapping a lot of things around. I believe that's intentional. Also, it's spelled correctly. That is another thing happening here. There are sections where everything is spelled correctly and the grammar and sentence structure for the most part makes sense. And then other parts are so screwed up that it's like translating another language. There are parts of this where I do not know what the author is saying. Also, Voldemort speaks in a terrible version of ye olde English, like thou must kill vampire Potter, Harry Potter. Voldemort gave me a gun. Yes, Voldemort provides the main character, Ebony, with a handgun to dispose of Harry Potter. Not only is this hilarious, I think it's a reference to the amount of people being like, man, fucking wizards, you just kill Voldemort with a gun, like whatever. See, there's so many parts of this that are unintentionally clever that I believe that it has to be on purpose. I think if this was truly the worst piece of fiction ever, written by someone who is trying to be serious, it wouldn't be this funny. Names throughout this entire thing are spelled differently almost every time, including the main character, Ebony. Snap and Lupin, which is Snape and Lupin. Throughout this entire work, they are perverts, and I guess pedophiles, because I believe Ebony is 17. There's a lot of themes. There's a lot of wildly inappropriate themes in this that are treated very casually. There's assault, there's pedophilia, there's a lot of drug use, there's a lot of talk about self-harm. That was kind of the era. This was written in 2006, so that I believe part of that is intentional, but if someone was writing this today, they might not do that, even as a work of satire. But also, the casual approach to self-harm, I believe, is part of it. That was an unfortunate sect of, mid-2000s scene and emo culture, just that really casual approach to self-harm. So I do believe that was intentional. Dumbledore had constipated the Cydio camera they took of me naked. Yes, so Snape and Lupin took an inappropriate video. There's also a lot of that. There's a lot of, weird sex tape references. An inappropriate video photo of Ebony. It's just the sentence, constipated, confiscated. That's the interesting thing about the writing style of this, is that the author can't spell. But instead of misspelling the word she's intending, it's often substituted with a real, very similar word that is spelled correctly, like constipated instead of confiscated. You see, Anabi, Dumbledore said, to see what is in the flames, you must find yourself first, K. Just right here, most of this is spelled okay, and then the dialogue is almost incoherent. So, first of all, Dumbledore, with the dumb part mostly capitalized. So we have Hagrid yelled, and then yell has an ED, and then looked shocked. She left off the E's. If you couldn't spell, I feel like you'd do it with more consistency. If you didn't know there was supposed to be an E in between, looked ED and shocked ED, then why'd she do it correctly with yelled? I feel like if you can't spell or you don't know stuff like that, it would be more consistent, which I believe my mother believes that this was written drunk, which is possible, but I think too much of it is intentional. Hairgrid and Dumbledore. See, the names are misspelled often, but they're always different. Also, we have another little author's note in the middle of a paragraph. Stop it now, you horny simpletons, shouted Professor McGoggle. That's hilarious. Also, simpletons and professor is spelled correctly. I don't give a darn what Voldemort does to Draco. There's excessive swearing in this fanfic. They say fuck like every other word. So I think it's funny. This is the only instance of censoring I found in the entire fic. Darn. They swear so much. And then random darn. Don't you think gay guys are, like, so hot? There is a lot of, every man, every man in this is bisexual. That is expressly stated, and the author mentions several times that it's very hot. I believe this is also a big reference to fan fiction and the fetishization of gay men and, like, the yaoi era. So I think that is, yeah. I would also like to note that the author says the F slur a couple of times, maybe like 2, 3, 4 times. And I think that's part of this, where the author is fetishizing gay and bisexual men, but is still saying these slurs. Like, I think the biggest piece of satire here is that the author either is or is trying to emulate a teenage girl who does not leave her bedroom and does not interact with real people. Because we have so many, like, archetypes of that, like a fanfiction writer, a yaoi gay man fetishist, a person who is in the fandom world with Harry Potter, the emo scene MySpace type. Later on, we have some, like, shoehorned Japanese type behavior. If this is satire, I believe that the author is trying to emulate that type, that era of basement bedroom dweller. So, in that, this would be a person who, on one hand, fetishizes gay and bisexual men, but on the other hand, uses slurs. I don't know if that makes sense, but that is what I think. Self-harm warning. Before I put the text on the screen, the author expressly states that she has harmed herself. So, if you're not okay with seeing that, just skip a minute or so. Here's this. Again, I wasn't around in 2006 reading things like this, nor was I on the internet. I was a child. I don't know if this is a stereotype then, but there is the stereotype that if you write fanfic, if you're a fanfic author, terrible things happen to you. So every author's update, it's like, sorry guys, I was hit by a car and my house burned down. And, like, terrible things happen to fanfic authors. It's like a trope. It's a stereotype. So I think that's what this is. There's a couple of author's notes where she says this exact thing. Did she actually go to the hospital because of this? I don't know. We don't know if any of this is real. But if it's not, I believe that that is a reference to that. So we have all these references, and this is somebody who knows what they're talking about as far as fanfic culture goes, as far as Harry Potter goes, and as far as, like, emo scene, goth, mid-2000s era. This is somebody, whether it's real or not, who has a grasp on these things. This paragraph. Everybody is in love with Ebony. Overly so. And if you are an author who wants to write this perfect self-insert character, you approach it like, okay, I want everybody to love her, but you can't do it too much or people are like, oh, this is annoying. This is over the top. Everybody is obsessed with Ebony. Once again, this is another connection to this work coming from someone who knows fan fiction culture. This is someone who has read a lot of self-insert fan fiction. Because often the self-insert character is absolutely perfect in every way. She is absolutely beautiful. Everybody is madly in love with her. She maybe has some kind of, like, protagonist main like, magical powers. She might be overpowered. She might be the chosen one. She typically is not aware that she's incredibly perfect, even though everyone is completely in love with her. That is the typical YN self-insert character. The not like the other girls, Mary Sue, perfect, beautiful, but doesn't know it protagonist. And that is exactly what Ebony is, to a T. The author even spells it out for you in that little author's note in that paragraph, like, oh, she's not a snob, but people just tell her all the time that she's beautiful. What's wrong, honey? Asked Draco, taking off his clothes so he could screw. He had a sex pack, get it, because he's so sexy, and a really huge you-know-what and everything. I think that speaks for itself. It's fucking hilarious. I started to cry and weep. Both. You'll note the part that I censored after the cry and weep. I think you can infer what that next sentence says. That's what the main character and other characters in the story do. If they are sad, they harm themselves. If they are happy, they harm themselves. It's very random. It almost, and this is probably insensitive to say, it almost comes off as a hobby for these characters, because Ebony does, or the author does mention sometimes when the characters do this, that they do it because they're depressed. There's a strange romanticism of depression, as was par for the course in, the emo scene era and the Tumblr era. That was a thing, just the romanticizing of depression and mental illness. So the author does say a couple of times, oh, they were feeling depressed, so they did this. But the characters also do it at random. Like, sometimes Ebony will wake up in the morning, get dressed, do that, and then head out for the day with no context as to why she did it. It's just something she does sometimes. These moments are incredibly random. Like that sentence. Like, it's always one sentence of like, yep, this character did that, and then went on with their life. So it's very random. Gerard looked even sexier than he did in the pictures. Even Draco thought so. I could totally see him getting an erection, but it didn't matter, because I knew, I think I mean now that we were the only true ones for each other. Draco is also bisexual, and the Gerard in question is Gerard Way. Anabi, I'm not. Please come with me. He fell down to his knees and started singing "The World is Black" by Good Charlotte to me. I was flattered, cause that's not even a single. He memorized the lyrics just for me. That's hilarious. I was flattered. Or I was flattened, sorry. I was flattened because that's not even a single. That's hilarious. Are you shitting me? Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary is Hermione, by the way. All of the main characters are goth and renamed. All of their parents are dead. Half of them are vampires. They're all Satanists. It's a whole thing. Bloody Mary was standing there. I don't know how to pronounce that. There's a lot happening here. At some point, random Japanese is introduced. I don't know if it's correct or not. I'm sure it's not. Characters call each other kawaii a lot all of a sudden. I think this is another internet culture type reference. Everybody's obsessed with Japan, and Japanese is so cool, and anime, and, just like Japanese, some people still do it, but I feel like that was the era of like really putting Japan and Japanese culture on a pedestal and how cool and everything it was. Just like the anime obsessed era. Willow was the self-insert character for the author's real-life friend Raven. You learn in the author's notes... I just burped. You learn in the author's notes that the author and Raven had some kind of falling out, and so, for like one chapter, Willow got expelled, as you can see here, and then she died or was murdered. A warning for assault. And then Snape and Lupin, if you remember, who are perverts and pedophiles, defile her corpse. The next chapter, though, probably not even the next chapter, very soon after, the author notes that her and Raven have made up, and Willow comes back to life, and every character is now fine with her. This fucking hilarious little bit. Dumbledore wearing a robe that says Avril Lavigne on the back. That's the funniest shit I've ever heard in my life. Everything about this. Snape and Lupin, having sex in the middle of an empty hallway with Dobby watching. This is Dobby's only appearance, by the way, was being a voyeur for Snape and Lupin. Ludicrous. In case you aren't aware, that spelling of ludicrous is not how you spell the word ludicrous. That is how you spell the rapper's name. So, yeah. Normally I would have been turned on because I love seeing guys do it, but both of them were fucking preps. By the way, Snake has moved to Gryffindor now. I don't even know what to say about that. More bisexual man fetishizing. Snake has moved to Gryffindor, evidently. This fanfic, just sentence after sentence, hurls information at you. It's a lot. This is, Harry, vampire, is showing Ebony his flying car. His dog father, Sirius Black. Sirius Black, is Harry Potter's godfather, who can transform into a large black dog. This is a major plot point in the Harry Potter books. This video could be 30 seconds long. Dogfather. That's all you needed to see. There's two different things happening here. First of all, the concept of Harry/vampire's invisibility cloak being black. That's funny. How can it be black if it's invisible? I don't remember if he was a janitor or if he was like a watchman or what his deal was. There was an old, creepy, ornery man named Filch, and he had a cat, Mrs. Norris. In this fic, these characters appear a few times, and their names are swapped. Mr. Norris is the janitor man, and Filch, which is spelt in all kinds of ways, is the cat. This is a person who has knowledge of Harry Potter. Like, those are two very minor characters. Professor Rumbridge and Cornelia Fudge. Cornelius is spelled Cornelia or Cornelio most of the time. Dumbledum. What the beep are you doing? Alright, so I said that darn was the only censoring in this. I guess there is one more. But again, there's swears. Every sentence. Beep. I just noticed that it says Mr. Way. So either Rumbridge is misgendering Ebony, because remember, Way is Ebony's last name, or the author herself is misgendering Ebony. Just thought that was very interesting. See, the lapses in grammar and like proper sentence structure and stuff, it goes so far beyond not being able to spell words, or even if you could blame all this on autocorrect, there are choices being made here that are nonsensical. I ate some Count Chocula and drank some blood from a cup. Count Chocula. Just the idea that everything in this is supposed to be goth, emo, darkness. So much so that the vampire, who does drink blood, eats Count Chocula cereal. Because it's vampire cereal. I believe this happens a handful of times in this fic, actually. The only actual food that Ebony consumes that's not blood or drugs or alcohol is Count Chocula. Ebony, Darth Vader. First of all, Ebony spelled incorrectly and then correctly right next to each other. Second of all, Darth Vader misspelled instead of Voldemort. It's supposed to be Voldemort speaking. That's fucking hilarious. This, Professor Sinister, it took a while for me to figure out. It is supposed to be Professor Trelawney, and the author goes back and forth between calling her terrible misspellings of Trelawney and Sinister. And Professor Sinister is really cool and young, and she's half Japanese and speaks it, and she's also addicted to drugs, I think. So there's this exchange, which is incredible. He put his throbbing you-know-what in my tool sexily. OMFG, Draco, I screamed, having an orgasm. We stated Frenching passively. There's a lot of, like, random sex thrown in to this fic. It's super random. And it is all written like this. There's a lot of phrases like that, like, you know what, and stuff like that. I think this is another, like, deep fanfic world cut where it's really hard to write a sex scene unless you're good at that kind of thing. So there's a lot of bad ones, especially when you're first starting out and writing your cringe fanfics. So I think all of the randomly shoehorned in sex scenes and the way that they're written is a reference to that. Also, to play off of my theory that this author is playing a part, and this author is pretending to be a nerdy, strange teenage girl. The author is writing this from a place of like, oh, I'm a teenage girl and I love Harry Potter and I'm goth and I'm emo and it's 2006, and that's the satire angle we're coming from, where the author is pretending to be someone specific writing this. I think that could be a play off of that, where all of her sex scenes, there's tons of them, but they are very short and have a lot of terms like that, like my you-know-what, his thing. as if they are sex scenes written by someone who wants the sex scenes to be there, but is still uncomfortable saying the words. So that's the satirical angle that I'm beginning to believe this is all coming from, where the author is trying to convey that she is a certain kind of person through the way that she writes. And if this is true, if I'm right, and that is the angle that the author is going for, she did a absolutely brilliant job. Like, she absolutely fucking nailed it. There's a lot happening here. First of all, in this scene, Ebony starts to get visions of the future, and they're bad. To stop Voldemort, they decide that Ebony needs to go back in time to when he was just a student in Hogwarts, and needs to, like, seduce him and get him to fall in love with her, because maybe if he's in love, it'll, like, change his outlook on life, and he doesn't become evil. Tara, I see Drac times are near. Tara appears to be the author, and this happens a couple of times towards the end of this fic, where instead of Ebony, the author just writes Tara, or at least tries to. I don't know how you fuck up your own 4-letter name, but it happens. She peered into da balls. Voldemort. Snoop garbed the caramel and put it in his pocket. This is supposed to be Snape grabbing a camera. It was Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil is a Lord of the Rings character that appears only in the books. Tom Bombadil is also, I believe, the only thing that was cut from the books when they were adapted into movies. That's a deep literary cut. The author can't spell, but has read Lord of the Rings. He's not in the movies. That's not where she got that from. There's a lot going on here. So Ebony travels back in time and meets Voldemort / Tom Riddle / Satan, which he calls himself because he's goth, and evidently that's his middle name, according to the author. There's this scene where he knows things that happen in the future. It's supposed to be the 80s, and he says these two things, like, it was Hogsmeade, and then they changed the name to Hogsmeade in the 2000s. That's 20 years in the future. This Tom Riddle / Voldemort / Satan does not know that Ebony is a time traveler. How does he know this information? Same thing with Hot Topic / Hot Issue. And then in 1998, they changed it to Hot Topic. That's not true, by the way. Professor Slutborn. I don't feel like I need to say much about that. We went sexily to potions class, but Snap wasn't there. Instead, it was Cornelio Fuck. Are you shitting me? STFU shooted Cornelia Fuck. He is in Abkazan now with Snape and Lupin. He is old and weak. He has cancer. Okay. That is literally the only mention of Dumbledore having cancer, by the way. It doesn't come up before or after that passage. That is the only instance. Professor Slutborn. It's pretty funny. Alright, at this point things get weird. We are towards the end of the fic, and chapter 39, this happens. This person, this troll, decides to write the next chapter, their version of it. Suddenly, everything is spelled correctly. This person is literate. This person is pretty funny. This person makes references to things that have happened throughout this fic. They've read it. They, touch on the fact that certain things are nonsense and make no sense. And then there's this part. In the story, Ebony gets shot with a bullet by a gun. She survives because she's a vampire, but also because she's in the past, so she, doesn't belong there, so she's not real, so she can't die. Which actually, honestly, as, a fiction plot point, that's pretty good. That's not a bad idea for a work of fiction. The troll writes that Ebony dies and goes to hell, and her eternal torment is that she is dressed like a prep. So she's wearing a bunch of Hollister, American Eagle, and she can't take it off, and she is doomed to this fiery eternal hell as a prep. And then after that, it goes back to normal. This is a lot, and I'm not going to read the whole description of this new character. We are introduced to a really cool, sexy, gothic bisexual, just like the rest of the story. It's Hedwig. He has bleached blonde hair with black streaks. The author knows who Hedwig is, knows that Hedwig's an owl because Hedwig is black and white, is a black and white owl. The author turns Hedwig into a soft, sensitive bisexual man who is Voldemort's ex-boyfriend. What? It's supposed to say Azkaban. Instead, we have the country of Azerbaijan. Eyeshadow. Like apple. I couldn't find I couldn't screenshot a section that made sense. I couldn't find an explanation for this that made sense to show visually, but Ebony runs into Marty McFly, and he provides her with a time machine that transforms into an iPod, so she can time travel easier. Also, Marty McFly is goth. There's not much more to say about that. This is my last piece of evidence. The fic ends really abruptly. There's some kind of standoff. I don't even remember. People are dueling. It just ends. You guys are in a Latin standoff. Latin. As opposed to the term Mexican standoff. It's a Latin standoff. Like Latin America. Those are some of the main examples I have here. Just read the thing. You'll find even more. If I screenshotted and presented every single piece that I thought made this an incredible piece of satire, it would just be the whole thing. But those are the main examples that I have. And yeah, it's too intentionally hilarious and referential to be anything but intentional. I know. Hi, Dwight. I know this video is incredibly chaotic and disjointed, and I'm not sure I did a great job presenting a cohesive point. So I guess my point is, go and read My Immortal through the lens that this author is trying to convince you that she is a teenage girl, nerd, fandom, emo type girl in 2006, alone in her bedroom with only Tumblr to comfort her. Was there Tumblr in 2006? I don't even know. Just read it through that lens that the author is trying to convince you that she is a specific person. And not only will you believe that, but you'll see that she nailed it. So I guess that is the point that I'm trying to make. This author is trying to convince us that she is of a specific persona, and I think she did so. I think she did it. So yeah. Alright, that's it. That's all I got. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, God bless you. Have a great day. Bye.